If you're like me and you're scrambling to complete the first ever Pokemon Emblem event, then this is the video for you. Today, I'm going to be going over the exact Pokemon deck that I have been using that feels like an absolute cheat code. On the screen now are all the cards you're going to need to complete this deck. However, you won't need all of them specifically, which we'll get to in a minute. Out of these 20 cards, the non-negotiable ones are the 4 evolutionary line Venusaur cards, as well as the 4 evolutionary Butterfree cards. Now, the name of the game for this deck is stalling. Stalling, 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 stalling. Now, see how I stalled as I lost my train of thought? Yeah, you're gonna want to remember that as we continue to use this deck and as you use it as well. Now, the overall point of this deck basically is just to keep healing until you physically can't anymore. Now, you may be asking, how will you do that? Well, Venusaur has a move called Giant Bloom that not only does 100 damage per turn without any consequences, but it also heals you for 30 points. Now, on top of this, your Butterfree has an ability that heals all your Pokemon that are active or benched for 20 points every turn without being in the active position or requiring energy. I think you're starting to understand the sweatiness behind this deck and why it's absolutely broken, but you may be asking why the definition or the name of the game for this deck is to stall and not to heal. Well, to fully evolve your Venusaur and Butterfree, it takes a lot of turns and a lot of luck. This game as a whole is basically built on luck. However, this requires way more than usual. In the world's best scenario, it'll take you on average 5 to 6 turns to set up both of your fully evolved Pokemon. Now, of this, Venusaur is way more important than Butterfree is, but if you want your Venusaur to be an absolute unit and have that much more value, you need Butterfree as well. Anyway, so what you're going to want in your deck are cards or Pokemon that allow you to draw more cards or to summon more Pokemon. In our case, we have Caterpie that will pull a random Pokemon from your pile, Meowth that will draw 1 random card in general, Professor Oak that draws 2 cards in general, and a Pokeball that allows you to draw 1 basic Pokemon. Ideally, you'll be getting 1 extra card per turn to have in your hand as a usable card, but you'll also be speeding up the process of evolving your Pokemon faster than your opponent will be. Now, to touch on the other cards that are non-Pokemon cards, we have a Hand Scope that lets you see your opponent's hand, a red card that reshuffles the opponent's deck and pile, and then Sabrina that makes the enemy swap in a different Pokemon. Now, these cards all deter the enemy from evolving their Pokemon or doing damage to ours, which is extremely crucial in the early stages where Caterpie and Meowth are very weak but have very long-term investments on our team. Lastly, I forgot to mention our 4 healing cards, but they're pretty self-explanatory, especially that one does 20 HP and the other does 50. In short, all of these cards are replaceable, but in the state of the game now and what cards are available, I would suggest this exact deck. Now, something to note when using this deck is that we have 2 Meowths, 2 Bulbasaurs, and 2 Caterpies, but only 1 of each evolved Pokemon from there. Both of the Meowths are completely disposable, as well as 1 Caterpie and 1 Bulbasaur when fighting. Now, on the other hand, 1 Bulbasaur and 1 Caterpie are extremely crucial, non-negotiable. You cannot sacrifice these Pokemon. Now, let's just say you were to sack both Bulbasaurs, you wouldn't then be able to get Ivysaur or Venusaur. So basically, it's important to have 1, but you could sacrifice at least the other, if that makes sense. Something else to note is that every Pokemon in this deck have a very low recall amount, especially Butterfree that has a count of 1 energy that actually decreases when evolving, which not many Pokemon have. With all that being said, try not to recall as much as you can, as it is important that Venusaur gets all of the energy cards until he has his full ability, but don't be afraid to recall because it is cheap after all. With that being said, if you are trying to save your last Bulbasaur or last Caterpie, please don't be scared to recall. It is vastly more important to keep those cards alive, the one that we said to keep, than it is to worry about the energies to use them in general. Lastly, be advised that any EX card that you have on your team that dies in the active spot or from the bench will count as 2 points for your opponent. Venusaur is the prime reason that I'm mentioning this, especially as it's the only EX in our deck. As you're setting up your entire fight, basically what you want to be doing is stalling. And now stalling could mean using one of your items to hinder the opponent, but you could also sack one of your Pokemon, such as Caterpie, Meowth, one of your Bulbasaurs, whatever, to then give them a point. But as you lose points to your opponent, that EX will no longer matter. As your opponent's at 2 points, points, it will no longer have a negative implication to have an EX die, as you cannot go over 3 points. So actually what I'm saying is you should be sacking Pokemon until Venusaur is ready, and Venusaur will be your last card, and you will absolutely sweep the entirety of their team, even if you don't have any points, before releasing Venusaur out. So basically, to sum it up, it should be the opponent has 2 points and you may have probably 0, 1, or somehow maybe 2 points. But again, we're not focusing on getting damage early on. We're focusing on getting the Venusaur ready to sweep their entire team. All right, so to bring the video home, I just really want to say thank you for watching the video. Although I've been collecting cards for about 15 years since I was a kid, I have never actually fully played the card game until Pokemon Pocket came out about a month ago. I am very much new to this game and I am still learning just like you guys are. So please, if you guys have any suggestions, any other decks that you guys think work really well, feel free to put them in the comments. I would absolutely love to see what you guys are using. If this deck also does work out well for you, please put it down in the comments so I know that this video did help you at least in some manner, form, or fashion. That's all for today. Thanks for listening to me yap. Peace, and I will see you guys on the next one.